The prophecy of the popes is not necessarily what you think. One thing is for sure, it's not the canonized words of all the popes that ever led the Roman Catholic Church in volume form. This same prophecy is more mysterious than that. It is reminiscent of sages like Nostradamus, who predicted a number of cataclysmic events leading to the modern era. Even more interesting is the fact that it was spoken by an obscure Irish priest who has since been elevated to sainthood. Yet the Church has strongly denied the substance of his prophecies, which seem to point to the present Pope and end-time dynamics. In the same vein, the Pope's predecessor, Benedict XVI, retired unceremoniously, thus paving the way for Pope Francis to emerge. This fact adds a little more kindling to the flame. No doubt Pope Francis is in tune with the times. He even has a thing or two to say about topics like climate change and LGBT rights. And rather than absolve him, his calling implicates him somewhat with regard to the same prophecy. Yet what is this end-time prophecy all about? The prophecy of the popes consists of 112 cryptic Latin phrases, purportedly predicting all the Catholic popes, beginning with Celestine II. It was first published in 1595 by Benedictine monk Arnold Wyon, who attributed it to Saint Malachy, a 12th century Irish archbishop. While the prophecy accurately describes popes up to the year of our Lord, 1590, its accuracy diminishes for subsequent popes, leading historians to conclude that it was likely a fabrication written shortly before publication. However, it is said that Saint Malachy experienced this vision of future popes while in Rome in 1139. His words were recorded, but then they were allegedly deposited in the Vatican secret archives, only to be rediscovered in 1590. The Catholic Church itself seems to have no official stance on the prophecy, while some Catholic theologians have dismissed it as a forgery. In fact, the Church tried to suppress the document when it was first published. But clearly, it has gained some traction since then, thanks to ardent followers of papal history. Despite the uncertainty surrounding the authenticity of the prophecies, end-time enthusiasts can't help but point to the striking similarities between Pope Francis's papacy and the very last entry of this prophetic document. The prophecy concludes with a final pope identified as Peter the Roman, whose pontificate allegedly precedes the destruction of Rome. As suggested, this pope represents the 112th pope, which is the last one before the supposed end of the world. And it just so happens that Pope Francis is the 112th pope when counting through the entries of this prophecy. The clues for the interpretation of each prophetic entry for the popes that came before the document was published involve personal connections between the pope's birthplaces, family names, personal arms, and church titles. However, efforts to connect the prophecy to historical popes elected after its publication have been strained. However, some interpreters have noted partial successes in aligning the mottos presented therein with popes that came after its publication. For the sake of credibility, Saint Malachy himself was born in Armagh, Ireland in 1094. He received his ordination as a priest in 1119 under Saint Malachy and furthered his studies in sacred liturgy and theology at Lismore. He became abbot of Bangor in 1123 and consecrated as Bishop of Connor a year later. Eventually, he was elevated to the primacy of Armagh in 1132, though he initially hesitated to accept the position due to various intrigues and difficulties. During his tenure as Archbishop of Armagh, Saint Malachy had the opportunity to journey to Rome twice. It was his aim to petition Pope Innocent for palliums and obtain monks for a new foundation in Ireland. It was during one of his stays in Rome that he purportedly saw the future vision of popes. Saint Malachy died on November 2, 1148 at Clairvaux, where he had fallen ill while on his way to Rome a third time. He was subsequently canonized by Pope Clement III on July 6, 1199. He now has a feast day which is celebrated on November 3 in Ireland to avoid clashing with the Feast of All Souls. As mentioned, Saint Malachy's prophecy itself contained a sequence of 112 popes, with each pope assigned a Latin phrase. These phrases described each pope uncannily, or at least those it got right. Pope Benedict XVI, who resigned unceremoniously, was the 111th pope, and it turns out his Latin phrase translated to the glory of the olive. And this prophecy came to pass when he chose Benedict as his papal name. Saint Benedict, to which the Pope chose to be named, was of the Olivetan order. Some other prophecies that were spot on include Pope Leo XII, who reigned from 1878 to 1903. He was associated with the phrase light in the sky, a description that corresponds to the presence of a comet depicted in his coat of arms. This celestial imagery also aligned with Leo's papacy, during which he emphasized themes of enlightenment and spiritual guidance. Another notable example was Benedict XV, who served as Pope from 1914 to 1922. He was linked with the phrase religion depopulated, and it resonates with the tumultuous events of his papacy, including the devastation wrought by World War I and the societal upheaval accompanying the Russian Revolution. Additionally, Pope Paul VI, who reigned from 1963 to 1978, was associated with the translated phrase, flower of flowers. This designation happened to be a symbolic representation of a fleur-de-lis featured in his coat of arms. The imagery also suggests a connection between his pontificate and themes of spiritual renewal and transcendence, all of which conveniently leads us to Pope Benedict's early retirement. He was inevitably leaving the next pontiff to fulfill the role of the final pope, who according to the prophecy would be known as Peter the Roman. The prophecy suggested this last pope would guide his flock through a time of tribulation, culminating in the destruction of Rome and divine judgment. And that addendum is what has sparked widespread interest, as reminiscent of the buzz surrounding the end of the Mayan calendar in 2012. The final prophecy even includes certain biblical themes, such as the demise of the papacy and the destruction of the city of Rome. Regarding the Catholic Church's stance on the prophecies, Father Francis Lucas of the Catholic Bishops' Conference on Social Communications and Mass Media downplayed the significance of the prophecy in its entirety. He especially noted their occasional inaccuracy and reiterated that the Catholic establishment as a whole also follows suit in disregarding the prophecies. Suffice it to say, the prophecy has only called less than 10 popes accurately. However, the renewed interest in the prophecy has more to do with the Vatican being situated in a city of 7 hills, namely Rome. The city of 7 hills is also cited in the Book of Revelations as one that is marked for destruction in the last days. So observers have easily made the connection between Saint Malachy's prophecies and the so-called last pope who will usher in the final tribulation. And while the Church officially dismisses the notion of the end of the world following the selection of a so-called final pope, the speculation surrounding Pope Francis continues to captivate and provoke discussion among believers and skeptics alike. Saint Malachy's prophecy had foretold the last pope as Peter the Roman. So what has this got to do with Pope Francis? First off, he hails from Argentina, which initially seemed to defy this prediction. However, upon closer examination, it was revealed that Pope Francis has Roman ancestry, with both of his parents originating from Italy, the birthplace of the Roman Empire. Thus, you could say, the prophecy was partly fulfilled with the Pope being a Roman descendant leading the Catholic Church. Furthermore, Pope Francis's choice of name, Francis, in honor of Saint Francis of Assisi, holds intriguing connections to the prophecy. Saint Francis was nicknamed Francesco by his father, despite being born Giovanni di Pietro di Bernardone. Notably, the surname Di Pietro corresponds to Peter, indicating a symbolic link to the name Peter. So even though the Catholic Church will not readily admit it, Pope Francis's background and chosen name inadvertently intersect with elements of the prophecy. But whether Pope Francis will be the final pope leading the Church into the prophesied tribulations described in the Book of Revelation remains uncertain. However, believers will continue to speculate on the potential fulfillment of biblical prophecies as they relate to the clairvoyant priest Malachy, who has since attained sainthood. Only time will tell if the prophecy's foreboding narrative will align with that of Pope Francis's time as head of the Catholic Church.